Good day, everyone, and thank you for attending the webinar. Apologies for the late start as we were working through a couple of technical issues, and there were a few people that we were still waiting on joining. But we certainly want to welcome everyone to the webinar titled "Your Patients Are Here: Where to Recruit and How to Retain Highly Engaged Patients." I'm Dan McDonald with DAC Patient Recruitment Services, and I will be your moderator today. Today's webinar covers one of the most talked about and fastest growing areas in the patient recruitment and retention space. Specifically, how new technologies are having a real and measurable impact driving faster enrollment across clinical trials in the drug development industry. You'll hear from two experts on this subject today, Melinda Gertz, who's the Vice President of Operations at DAC Patient Recruitment Services. DAC is a Dallas-based provider of comprehensive global patient recruitment and retention support. You'll also hear from Dennis Upa, the Executive Vice President of Enterprise Markets at New York City-based Remedy Health Media, a leading health information and technology company that helps millions of patients and caregivers live healthier and more fulfilled lives. Melinda brings nearly 20 years of experience to share with you. Over that time, she has worked with hundreds of organizations, including trial sponsors, CROs, and sites, to help them plan and execute customized and effective patient recruitment and retention strategies. She's one of the most passionate industry professionals I know when it comes to improving the speed of enrollment in clinical trials, and I'm certainly happy to have her with us today. Dennis has more than 30 years of experience in the e-health and convergence media space, as well as a strong background in broadcast media. He has held executive leadership positions with several visionary e-health firms over the last 20 years, driving new strategies and strong growth during a time when that space was certainly one of the most competitive and fastest-growing markets worldwide. Both are what I would call grizzled veterans and true experts in the areas of patient recruitment and digital health media, respectively. There are a few things to keep in mind as we move through the presentation this afternoon. You'll see a comments box in the bottom right-hand corner of your window. Please send any questions or comments you have to me, and I will go through them at the end of the presentation. You'll see me listed as the Imperial Webinar Series host. Also, let me know if you'd like a copy of the slides or any specific follow-up information, and I'll be sure to get those through to you. With that, I'm happy to kick things off and hand the presentation over to Melinda and Dennis. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having us. While we're waiting for Melinda, I just want to thank everyone for having us today. We're thrilled to talk to you about online communities and mobile communication and their impact on recruitment and retention. I think Melinda's going to first talk a bit about the history, then I'll talk about some of the current trends. So the evolution of clinical trial recruitment has changed over the years. If you go back to the earlier times, we had to rely on referrals or center watch that were dealing with basically almost a one-to-one communication. So here's an example. If you click of a trial seeking a female patient only, you click to animate. You can see back then it was relatively easy with a small pool to find that one person. Then the industry determined that traditional media would be far more effective because you could reach far more people at one time through radio or print. The problem with that is, though you might find 3 of your target audience, you're also reaching a lot of people that are not appropriate. At one point, I ran television stations for a living, and I used to almost be amused by the fact of how much money was wasted by people trying to find 4 people with bunions in a population of 1 million viewers. And then finally, the evolution of .orgs, the more specialized communities, really led to kind of the best of both worlds because their size can be large enough to get more people, but you don't get the waste because typically within a specialized community, you're finding the right people at the right time. Many pharmaceutical companies are in the play as well. You see a lot of pharma condition websites where sites are essentially growing their own audience, taking advantage of the fact that by having a community of their own that's specifically related to their medication, they'll have the right people available to them when there's a need for a clinical trial. There's also, if you click for other players like 23andMe, which are using genetic testing and other means of creating a registry. And as you've been reading about this, there's some controversy about that, but it's certainly a means of getting a highly specialized audience and knowing a tremendous amount about that person. And then finally, there are clinical trial, if you click, databases. These are a strategy that some recruitment firms take, where they're actually building their own database and then fishing the same pond over and over again as the need comes up for a specific patient with a specific condition and specific characteristics. Here's the issue, though, of using that database strategy. The problem with the database is that demographics grow out of date. Today's pregnant woman, if you click again, is tomorrow's mother. And for a trial that's only related to a pregnant woman, obviously those demographics have grown out of date. Also, medications grow out of date as well. Somebody who might be on 3 particular medications that are all part of inclusion criteria may eventually be only on 1 medication, and so they're no longer relevant as well. And then finally, the cost. I don't have to tell anyone the cost of maintaining an accurate database, primarily because of the 2 reasons I just shared with you. They can grow out of date both demographically and from the standpoint of the characteristics of the patient's behavior and medications. So that leads to an evolution of clinical trial recruitment and more modern methods, and for that I'll throw it over to Melinda.
Thanks, Dennis. When we look at the evolution of clinical trial recruitment, and Dennis just shared with us sort of more of the traditional approach, in the more modern approach, what we're seeing a lot of is really the evaluation of, do we go about building our own databases? Do we go about building our own study-specific websites, maybe leveraging third-party, pre-existing condition-specific communities? Things like Patients Like Me, the patient support communities, which I'm sure you're all very familiar with, where individuals are joining these social communities to learn more about their healthcare options as well as more information about their disease, and really looking at ways that we can harness that information. You also see that something else people are considering is leveraging partnerships, and that's something that Dennis and I will talk about in more detail as we go through the rest of the presentation. But really, taking an existing partnership that they have a core competency in really gathering data related to a particular set of individuals and looking at their behavior characteristics and how can we use that to help us with our patient enrollment and engagement efforts. There's also, we've heard a lot about EMR projects or electronic health records. There's lots of initiatives that are being undertaken right now at really looking at how can we overlay the electronic medical record information, like within the U.S., related to claims data, so that we can even get to start having more of a pinpoint accuracy related to looking at different prevalence information. And I even know that the Institute of Medicine is also recently undertaken an initiative where they are trying to maybe determine how they can even take the data that we collect from clinical trial participants and use that to help us for the recruitment of future trials. Of course, really evaluating how we would do that and still protect the personal health information and the patient privacy. And then lastly, we're seeing a lot of population health projects. A lot of the pharmaceutical companies are providing more transparency to the public at large about what they are doing from a research perspective in clinical trials, and a lot of this is in place due to the Affordable Care Act. So you'll start seeing a lot more of these type of educational outreaches and approaches in just letting the public realize what's going on from a clinical trial perspective. So that will just start having even more of an educated audience that we're going to have to be speaking to. So with that, I'll turn it back over to Dennis to go into more detail about what we are doing sort of with the modern recruitment methods and how things are evolving.
Great. Thank you, Melinda. If you look at the fact that using a database is kind of having a warehouse approach, a more just-in-time approach is now availed because of the Internet. And, you know, all health sites are not created equal. And the reason why DAC has chosen to partner with Remedy is that we have, in February alone, 30.5 million unique visitors who were coming to our sites and specifically looking for content in lean-forward fashion. What I mean by that is, if you go to an encyclopedic site and you type in the word shingles, you may very well be looking to put a new roof on your home. But if you are a targeted patient who puts in that information, if you click again, you're going to go far beyond seeing information like symptom lists and seeking general knowledge and treatment overviews, but more into condition management tips or support networks or treatment guidance. The way we know that is, instead of typing in the one word like shingles, you might put in something like shingles migraine connection. And what we have found through doing this for over 2 decades, of which about a decade it's been online, the people that are the most qualified are the ones that are searching with what we call long-tail search terms of 3 or more keywords. There's also a lot of third-party research that bears this out. There's a company called Manhattan Research, and every year they go out and they talk to people about the sites they visit. If you click again, I'm going to have you click a lot on this one. One more time. 89% of our users, according to this third-party research, are users who are managing a chronic condition. And if you look around here, it's not the same for every site. Even though WebMD is a quality site with a lot more users, they actually have only 51% of their audience is actually a patient managing a chronic condition. And the reason for that is the people that go to the more encyclopedic sites tend to be the worried well. They may be researching a product, researching a school project, or they could simply be looking at information because of a celebrity who has come out to talk about a health issue, as Angelina Jolie did this week. There's also a difference between people that are actively seeking treatment. When you ask the question, what site do you go to when you feel that you want to research online before going to an MD appointment? If you click again, you see once again, not all sites are created equal. Asking to prescribe a specific brand name drug. This kind of speaks to how educated the users are that are going to certain websites. You'll see that it's not even close in this case. And again, it doesn't mean that we're rocket scientists and that the other sites listed here are not quality sites. It has to do with the nature of our audience, because we don't have a brand play where we're buying Super Bowl ads or banners behind home plate during the World Series, and are instead relying on content optimization and having a quality audience that's already engaged in communities. We tend to get the people that are a little more educated, who are more lean forward and are actively seeking treatment options, and those are typically the right people for a trial. And then finally, there's a book that came out about 10 years ago called The Influentials, and the theory is that 1 in 10 people tell the other 9 what to do. I always joke that you probably either are that person or know someone, and if you don't know somebody, you should worry about your friends. Again, we tend to have a pretty educated audience. So this gives you some sense of the fact that not all sites are created equal, but if you find the right sites, they can be a very fertile place to recruit patients. Here's an example of doing something creative in terms of a screener by basically looking in the right place for the right patients at the right time. We've been working with Cancer Treatment Centers of America for over 10 years to recruit patients into chatting with their online call center. And in doing research, we determined that the most key characteristics of whether a patient would convert or become a referral for them was the type of cancer they had and the type of insurance they had. So if you start clicking, it'll actually fill in these fields. So go ahead and keep clicking. You'll see Beth Smith. She puts in her email. She's got breast cancer. She has newly diagnosed. She's got commercial insurance, and she's contacting for herself. Once she clicks Submit, instantly information related to her type of cancer is pulled from Cancer Treatment Centers of America's website. So she's always seeing the most up-to-date information. And if you click a couple more times, she actually gets a high probability phone number and the opportunity to chat with their call center. If you click again, let's see at the same screener, a new patient comes. This is John Smith. It's his email. He has lung cancer, actually. He's newly diagnosed, but he doesn't have commercial insurance. Once he clicks, hit submit, he's going to get lung cancer information at the point of decision, but he gets only a low probability phone number and no opportunity to chat at all. If you keep clicking, you'll see that what we've done here is we've created literally dozens of personalized patient pathways. If you keep clicking, it'll show the various combinations based on insurance as well as the characteristics of the patient's cancer. And this is the type of personalization for a complex trial that is possible online that was never possible in the past, and certainly has opened up a whole new vista of how to recruit patients via the internet. Here's one more case study. We've been working with a large medical device company for medication-resistant Parkinson's. So this isn't just Parkinson's disease. These are patients who have tried and failed on other medications. We built a similar approach to what I just shared with you, and then asked people some questions after visiting the site. What we found was that 9 out of 10 visitors who came here were actually diagnosed with the condition, which, there's often a feeling that, well, if I do the internet, I'm going to get a lot of people that aren't really my prospects, so it's a waste of my time. The research didn't bear that out. Secondly, we found that visitors were 2.5 times more likely to schedule an appointment. 4 in 5 visitors said they wanted to talk to their doctor within the next 3 months. And most importantly, 91% said, keep sending me information about the condition and this therapy. So, the fact that people don't want to be bothered, not when it's the right information coming to them at the right time. There's also the ability to reach patients at point of care. And we've all been in doctors' offices where we see WebMD, the magazine. You see monitors on the wall by Accent Health, Seamless Medical, and a host of other players. And at the pharmacy counter, those 2 in the middle are actually magazines from Remedy, Remedy's Healthy Living, Thrive After 50, and Diabetes Focus. The beauty of this information is that it's reaching people right at the point of decision. And there are a lot of very creative ways to do this, from simply advertising within these publications or video streams to even creating custom content, which is a service we provide that can be placed at the doctor's office. This shares with you some information about how valuable this information that's placed at the point of care can be. And it has to do with the fact that we're waiting about 20 minutes, and I think that's generous. It's often more than that, to get about 6 minutes with the doctor. And when I first started, I've been in eHealth since 1999, and at that time, 16 years ago, that number was between 7 and 10 minutes, so it's shrinking. But 20% of the patients who are there are looking for information. And believe it or not, a lot of waiting rooms are telling them to turn their phones off, much like they do at the movie theater before the film starts. So having print or video in the waiting room is more valuable than ever. Point-of-care advertising is the second highest channel. So this is a case study that we did talking about patients at the point of care. Rather than advertising within an existing periodical, Remedy has the ability in over 575,000 different specialty waiting rooms to create for our clients, including DAX clients, a magazine about a specific indication. So let's say you have a trial related to allergies and you wanted to have information in the waiting room. We can create a custom publication on allergies, only have it in the allergist's office in zip codes where you specifically have a site, and then 100% of the advertising within the publication, and it can be anything from simply full-page ads, a series of vignettes, business reply envelope, or business reply card. All of that can be within the magazine. This was a program that we did in 2014 in December, so it's relatively recent. This was just released within the last month, this information. And we did an actual survey with IMS to see whether or not there was an actual impact by this advertising. What we found was that the offices with this custom publication prescribed 6% more new prescriptions than those without the magazines. There were 1.33 incremental scripts written, and the program yielded, most importantly, a 3-to-1 ROI from the investment that the company made with us. So, again, we're not the only ones doing this, but if there's a sense that these programs don't have a place in your repertoire when there is a sufficient budget to add this in, it does make sense. I don't recommend this being your only tactic unless it's a very specialized trial for which point of care and doctor discussion may make sense. But for almost any trial, this can have a place in your arsenal. I'll throw it back to Melinda now to talk about how these types of capabilities that companies like Remedy can bring to the table led them to partner with us and the types of things that we're doing.
Great. Thanks, Dennis. So when we think about the benefits of partnership, I think earlier in some of the slides we shared with you that, there's lots of things that people can consider in terms of, do you go at this on your own and developing your own study-specific websites or maybe creating your own database? Do you maybe look to work with other third-party providers like a Patients Like Me or a 23andMe, and the ability that they're able to garner some information related to those particular communities? One of the things I think Dennis may or may not have mentioned in the beginning that I wanted to bring up is, one of the charges that we have really in our space as in patient recruitment is I really think of ourselves as patient educators, and what are we doing to really raise the awareness about clinical trials as a whole. So really instead of really being in the position where we put together a public awareness campaign or educational campaign and getting individuals to respond, we really want to set the stage at some point in time to where we have individuals who are coming to us who's looking for more information. And I think this is one of the benefits, one of the strongest benefits of a partnership that we've seen, like working with a company like Remedy, is just exactly that. I mean, if you think about it, raising awareness and branding a clinical trial is no different than what we do in how we brand and market for consumer products. We're just not marketing a product. We're looking for, individuals to participate in clinical trials. So, there's a lot of the benefits you have is it takes a lot of time and a lot of effort. There's a lot of cost involved. If you're going to decide to take this initiative on independently or through your company, something that a partnership is able to afford you is you have those dedicated resources. This is their core competency in terms of really understanding the behavioral characteristics of what people are doing online. How are they coming to a particular site? What pages are they going to? How long are they staying engaged on those pages? All that information, it really allows us a greater insight into what's going to really attract individuals that we want to try to reach about participating in clinical trials. And you have the dedicated team that's constantly evaluating those behaviors. So really the benefits of partnership from my perspective is it's really the best of both worlds. Like I said, you have the ability to take like in the instance of Remedy, they get about 31 million unique visitors every month that are coming through healthcentral.com, which is their social or their healthcare online community. And the benefit of that is you don't have to create traffic to come to a particular study-specific website, right, because it hasn't been out there long enough to have organic growth. You have to drive traffic through your more traditional pay-per-click campaigns or through the use of banner ads, different blogs, things of that nature to drive traffic. The benefit of a partnership, again, is that you can take that same type of medium, that same type of outreach, and you can put it within this social community where you're already having a vast number of new people, unique people that are visiting that site on a monthly basis that then can learn about a particular trial that you're trying to enhance enrollment for. In terms of when to use, like with a trial center, and if you're going to have, when to use a trial center. There are times when it makes more sense than not. A lot of it is going to be dependent upon the disease indication, what are the referral patterns going to look like. Evaluating all of that will help you decide whether this would be the right mechanism to support your particular trial. If you do use some type of a digital format like what you see here on the screen on the right, if possible, it's always ideal to be able to include a pre-screening questionnaire within that website or within that trial center. Sometimes the length of that questionnaire, ideally it needs to be no more than 5 to 7 pages, right? And it's really meant to be a pre-screener. It's not meant to replace the actual screening that's going to happen at the site. There are times when that may not be applicable, again, depending on the stage of the disease and the severity of the disease, but probably more so than not, you're going to be able to provide or be able to include some questions that you would like to at least do some top-line pre-screening. And then on back-end considerations, again, you'll just want to think about the countries that are involved, where are you going to implement this strategy? From a cultural perspective, is an accepted practice? From a regulatory perspective, what are the timelines that are going to be involved? All of those things can have an impact on the overall outcome and success of a trial, of a website or trial center. So we've talked a lot about, and really what we wanted to show you is, okay, if you go it alone, so what are the pros and cons if you decide you want to create this type of environment on your own, or if you decide to work with a partner. So as I mentioned earlier, building screener sites can be expensive. The nice thing about doing it with a partner is they can build a screener site in an automated process. They already have the framework that's been developed, and so you can take advantage of that. So there are cost and time savings and efficiencies you can achieve through a partnership versus if you were going to go at it alone. Staff limitations can sometimes make it challenging to handle concurrent, unrelated projects. Working with a partner, as I mentioned, you have a dedicated staff that this is what they do, and it also allows you to have more scalability to expand or to reduce the project scope. Going at it alone, you're going to have to, if you build your site, and that might be the right decision for you, but just remember, as I mentioned, it's going to take time to build traffic that's going to be able to come to that site directly. Initially, you're going to have to drive all the traffic through external tactics. You're not probably going to have somebody just on their own through a search landing at your site. You're going to have to drive traffic to that site. Working with a partner, as I mentioned, like for instance, with Remedy and the use of Health Central, there's already existing traffic that's out there. It's traffic that's coming to Health Central just about a multitude of different healthcare-related issues, not necessarily the clinical trial, but you're able then to redirect that traffic specifically to the trial center that you want them to learn about. Also, if independently, your organization has core strengths that you really want to focus on, your core competencies. This may or may not be an area that you would consider a core competency, or maybe one that you decide to grow organically. In a partner situation, this is their business. This is one of their core competencies, and so they're able to really support any condition that you're looking to drive traffic for. So characteristics of a good partner. When you want to think about if you do decide that maybe creating a partnership is the way you want to go, there's a couple of points here that you may want to consider. The first one is allow you to reach patients at the appropriate point in their online journey. It's really important that your partner has the visibility to really see the behavioral patterns of people that are visiting the site. And as I said, what pages are they staying on the longest? What are they engaging with if it's an interactive type of a platform, what are they clicking through to? So being able to understand the audience that comes to the site really allows you to have some insight as to when is the appropriate time that you want to put in front of them the clinical trial opportunity that you have. So there again, you want to make sure they really understand the audience and that the content is very audience focused. You want to make sure that whoever you partner with has the ability to drive thousands to millions of unique visitors in specific disease communities. You want to make sure you're reaching your target population. And when we look at saying go beyond the encyclopedic and focus on the living with it, you really want a partner and someone that is going to develop a site that I consider what I would call very engaging. You want it to be not just content rich, but you also want there to be a personal side and some interaction that you can have. And you may see that through not static use, but through flash media, or there might be interviews with individuals that are going through, that have been diagnosed with a particular indication, that there's an interview and they're telling their story. Those are the type of things you really want to make sure that your partner has access to. Obviously, you want a good partner that has transparency and they're willing to share data with you so that you can also share data. They can share the information in terms of where the traffic is coming from, how people are clicking through, how many referrals are going to the particular research sites, and then you'll share the back-end data with them, because that's really how you're going to determine whether the program you have set up is successful or not. You also want to make sure that there's multiple ways that you can activate the target audience. So maybe not only just through doing the pre-screening questionnaire, but if there's also a contact form page, maybe you're having them contact a phone number, a local phone number directly. Anytime you can give multiple ways to activate your target audience and also the call to action, the higher your overall engagement and response rate is going to be. And then lastly, a strong benefit is you want to make sure that partnering with somebody that the deal structure is mutually beneficial for both of you. You both have something to gain out of the partnership, and so you want to make sure that your project or your contract is structured in such a way. And with that, I will send it back over to Dennis one last time to talk about the patient recruitment methods.
Great. You know, the other half of recruiting somebody into your trial is to retain them once they're there. So you'll see that dropout rates are pretty daunting. 15 to 50% of enrolled trial participants don't make it through. And it's a big problem. I've seen anywhere from $100 to $300 billion a year from adherence in the healthcare system, not just trials, but overall. 125,000 deaths and $8 billion per year in lost pharmacy revenue. Next click. You know, the reasons that people give for adherence issues specifically for trials were, well, I had trouble complying with the protocol specifications. Yeah, it sounded like a good idea going in, but then I had to go to the doctor's office for regular checkups. I had to go by the site and talk to them. It seemed like a lot. Outside influences. I saw a story on Dateline that made me worried about this particular protocol. There's a change in my personal situation. I was out of work and in need of money. I just got a job. A lack of motivation. Well, I'm going to stay in bed and play video games. And then finally, forgetfulness. And that, thankfully, is the number one factor. You know, some of these other things like sloth are harder to tackle. The forgetfulness technology has a lot of solutions to improve. And mobile retention can at least help half of these. Not all retention is created equal as well, and there's a lot of players out there, but as you're looking for people with whom to partner, it's first important to make sure that whatever they do is pretty customizable. Remedy Suite, for example, can send text messages, voice messages, or email reminders, which give patients tremendous flexibility. And you might say, well, why would I want a voice reminder? Well, I have a mother-in-law in her late 80s who does not own a computer and does not use a smartphone and never will, and getting a voice message on her landline is probably the only way to reach her. It can remind. You want it to be able to remind whatever they need reminding for, medications, showing up for appointments, taking their vitals. It can educate. We have a number of people that license our suite for clinical trials related to cognitive disorders and depression-related issues. And you can do a lot with simply sending out words of encouragement or prescribing behaviors such as leave your home and go meet 3 new people today. The medication is not the only thing that sometimes can alter behavior. It can reward. If you're able to do email and create HTML pages, you could potentially create reinforcement. And there's a major debate, I know, in the healthcare space regarding behavioral change and reinforcement. There are entire companies that have presented at conferences where I've been presenting that argue the pros and cons of whether patients should be bribed to take action. Regardless of how you feel about it, there's a lot of people that say it works. And it can even fulfill. We have the ability, for example, for Cigna Insurance, we are tied directly into their SKUs to allow their patients to do reminders through a program they have called Quick Fill. So whenever a patient is in need of prescription refills, they can do it directly through the reminder system. So if you have a long-term trial for which one particular medication is required, you could take the excuse of, well, I didn't get the medication refilled, so therefore I wasn't able to do it, off the table by allowing this to happen directly through technology. The best part about this is not only is I forgot the number one reason why people are not adherent, they want to be reminded. This is a trial, a study we actually did that was published in the Journal of Medicine Internet Research, and it was for a HIV youth AIDS study for 14 to 29-year-olds. And over 24 weeks, we sent personalized daily SMS reminders and then assessed whether or not they took their medication via text responses. 95% of the respondents said it was very helpful, and more importantly, 81% said they'd like to keep receiving text messages even when the study was over. And so it's not a hassle that sometimes people think it is. It's a real tool that, especially generationally, I think we're going to see more and more people, since we're so used to getting reminded on our phones. Pretty soon with the Apple Watch, there's going to be more and more people wearing watches that start flashing. There's a lot of technology that you can tap into. And that summarizes our presentation, and I think Melinda and I are both happy to answer any questions if anyone has any. I'll turn it over to Dan as to how that will work.
Well, thank you, Melinda and Dennis, for a very informative presentation. I hope that everyone that joined in on the call today found it to be useful information and certainly, hopefully, motivating you to look at your own strategies and how you might be able to bring in some of these different digital initiatives into the mix.